So when we were looking at our lesson plan template, and also something I should have mentioned in the first part A, is when you are writing down Unit 1 and what Unit 1's all about, and Area of Study 1 and what Area of Study 1's all about, or depending on your topic, of course, and the key knowledge area, I want you to actually write down any key terms from that key knowledge area. So key terms might be, for example, for my particular one, frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, all of those things that the students are meant to understand and know by the end. So we've covered lesson outcomes and indicators, outcomes being what they know and indicators being what they show. And you can probably have almost up to about, for a 75-minute lesson, I'll probably have up to about 5 of those. Although it could just be, 3 quite large ones as well. We got to lesson procedure and I explained how to put all of the handouts and resources you use into your appendix at the end of this lesson plan when you hand it in on Turnitin. And now we found our way to formative assessment. So the ways of modifying teaching and learning activities and checking understanding and consolidating learning. So part of this formative assessment would be for me to go to walk around the class and ensure labels are correct, and help any students with any misunderstandings or direct to elements of the text or slideshow that may be useful. So assessing what they understand and helping them learn. Okay, so formative assessment, of course, the diagram. Sorry, I should be putting that preceding there. It's preceding that there. The diagram and labels, definitions of function. Okay, that's going to be a great formative assessment for me to be able to see if they understand parts of the brain and their function, and also where they're actually correctly located. Secondly, some formative assessment that I may use is a learning activity from the textbook. The textbook, and check your understanding 3.6 or whatever it is, and then I would also have C appendix. C appendix. What have I got it there? I'd see appendix 9. So what I have here is a very poorly photographed part of a textbook. Your photograph will be far more beautiful than my photograph, but and I've also included the reference and the page number there. That's really, really important. So once I have written that, another formative assessment could just simply be some discussion questions on the board. I'd write them down here, discussion question 1, 2, 3, and they could just be as simple as me speaking about they could just be as simple as me speaking about an area of the brain that has received some sort of brain trauma and the effect of that on behaviour and cognition. So I could just be testing out what might we expect to see happen if the if the back of the head was hit hard with a blunt object. And of course I'm checking their understanding of then the cerebellum and what would happen there to those to the hindbrain and the basic functions there, and potentially even the occipital lobe, and they could experience some real blindness there too, to the primary visual cortex. So that's a really great formative assessment tool. So In terms of closure procedures, so this is summarising or reflective on the student's achievements or analysing errors. And this isn't just, and one of the things where students often lose marks is they just write up, give homework activities and say goodbye. There's far more to closure than that. So I'd probably be writing a short summary on the board of what we learnt today. That the frontal lobe is responsible for personality and cognition, and the occipital lobe is responsible for this, blah, blah, blah. And even prior to that, I could do a little activity where students have to stand up, and I'll yell out teacher yells out a brain part. So I might say right hemisphere motor cortex, and then they have to act out what it's responsible for. And of course, if I'm saying right hemisphere motor cortex, I should see them start moving their entire left side. And then I might write that short summary on the board, and then I might have some homework activities, and I would write them down and include them in my appendix. And of course, my closure procedures should go for, like, say, I will probably say 8 minutes. A good closure procedure. A closure procedure is not simply saying goodbye and putting homework questions on the board. Now, for consideration, adaptations and differentiation, of course, this is a lesson plan that we haven't conducted yet, and so we're pretending we are doing this and pretending that this is happening to our students. So I want you to assume that you have one student for each example of adaptation, differentiation, and provide evidence for how you would accommodate this. So reteaching is for students who need more teaching and practice. So I would like you here to explain exactly how you would go about reteaching. Sit down with student. Refer to board. Redraw a brain, point to areas, get them to suggest names, etc. Whatever it is that you get them to do to help reteach them. And then you might give them a handout too, and that handout could be let's have a look, reteaching handout here, and I would refer to appendix, so this would be something else. I have it there too, and I would say, look, let's look at the brain a bit more, and I give them a bit of a remedial look at the brain, get them to get their headphones out, watch a special sort of, yes, it's sort of for primary school age children. They don't have to know that, but it's a YouTube clip there, and it goes through in really sort of simplistic layman's terms what the brain does and what certain areas of the brain do. And there might be a few questions that they need to answer to, and I give that to them for when they're having difficulty. So that's after I've made sure that they have covered, and I've written here that, I'll make sure I would write here. It's after I've made sure that they've covered everything that the rest of the class has covered and they've got their diagram correct. And then I would give them that clip to do, and that might be something that's part of their homework activity if we run out of time as well. For extension, of course, I'd be doing the same thing. Sit down with student B, congratulate them on the exceptional work that they've done, ask them a few more challenging questions. I might ask them what might happen if the left area of the temporal lobe was damaged, particularly above the ear, and that sort of thing, get a bit more specific. But of course, then I should have an extension activity for my extension students requiring challenge. And this is, of course, one I've just very quickly stolen off the internet. That's why I can't see it properly. But I might have a human brain crossword for them to complete, because they've probably more than likely completed the activities on the board and the homework activities that you've provided for them already if they are extension students. And of course, I have that in my appendix as well. For independent practice, I want you to describe and summarise what you would give to students for independent practice, just kids students who say that they're just really interested. They really loved this lesson. They want to learn more about the brain, and they don't need you to guide them to do that. They just want to investigate it a bit more at home, and you want to give them some direction for how to do that. So you would summarise in here how you might do that, and then of course you'd refer to the appendix, and here's another handout that you might give to them as well. So for every lesson that you, and this is a really great video actually anyway, so for every lesson that you have, you should always have these 3 options for your students, because some students will struggle, some students will excel and need more challenge, and there will also be students who are just really interested and would like to continue on with their studies beyond the textbook. And so you should have options for all of those. And once you have completed that template beautifully and have all of your resources that you've used for that entire lesson, and of course where it has teaching materials and preparation, you should have handout for extension, see appendix, blah blah blah. You should have all of that there as well, and you make sure your name is on here as well, in your teaching philosophy, who you are, and so you've got your part A and your part B. Make sure that you also go through the assessment task criteria and rubric. That is very important, so that you know that you have covered all elements of the lesson plans that I want you to include. Of course, the broad range of references in APA style I will be changing to just any materials used from a textbook from a website have been referenced correctly. I'm not looking for a number of references. I'm just looking for correctly referenced resources if you've used them, or textbooks if you've used them. Okay, and that concludes our how to write up a lesson plan template. I hope that helps everyone.